Hey, what's up guys, it's LEGO Hobo 910 here with another LEGO video, and in this video I'm reviewing set number 75243, the LEGO Star Wars Slave 1 20th Anniversary Edition. So let's get right into the review. So first off, as with all the other 20th Anniversary Edition sets, it comes with a special 20th Anniversary minifig, which is a replica of a original minifig from one of the first few years of LEGO Star Wars. And we'll look at the minifig itself more closely. But it does come with a stand like all the other ones here, with this nice printed tile. It's the same for all of them except different names at the bottom. This one says Princess Leia. Then it also comes with this 2x4 so you can put it there and then use it to connect to other stands so you can put them all connected in a line. So now let's look at the actual build of the set. So here is the Slave 1 itself, which is a really good looking and pristine model. It looks a lot like the UCS one, except that one was $200 and this is only $120. So it's a lot cheaper and easier for people to get. But it still has many of the looks and looks beautiful. Around this red section, it's fairly nice and smooth and just looks awesome, as well as the big curves here. Then up here where you want there to be some more texture, there is, and it also has all these great angles. It's just a very well-built set, and also show you and talk to you a bit more about the internals of this, which are crazy. But also, for this set, they made two new pieces. Mirrored slope elements, you have that and then the mirror version there. And they really help get the correct angles of this. It is a bit choppy around here, but it's not too bad and doesn't bother me too much. And then this is also fairly big, as you can see by my hand compared to it. It's not a small set either, and it would look great on anyone's shelf. Now let's look at the back here, because they even included detail on the back, because obviously, you know, it flies like this, so you can see the back a lot. With just like some simple thrusters and then tubes, and they even have a little handle here which flicks out, so you can hold it easier, kind of swoosh it around nice and easily. I really like the way that looks. And as you may have noticed here, also these wings are gravity driven. They just turn the correct way when you need them. They don't work as well as another gravity driven feature, which I'll show you in a second, mostly because they don't have quite as much weight. And then those wings themselves also look really good. They have a couple little stickers there to kind of continue the great pattern. Then they have all sorts of little greebling and details, like these little spikes, and using the clips and binoculars here. And then also, the way that this is built is pretty interesting to get this angle and have that all work out. And then that even uses, like, nice uses of the slots in some of these pieces here in order to add a little bit of extra detail. And the little clips and also little bits of dark orange. It looks so clean, but also kind of has that rough, not new Star Wars feel that the originals have, where, you know, everything isn't super clean and nice. And along the top here, we have two more stickers to continue this gray pattern throughout, along these giant slopes. And then it gets up into kind of the main cockpit area, and the whole kind of nose of the ship. So here is the kind of gray part of the ship. I like all the sand green mixed in. Once again, it has that very kind of rough, textured feel, but then again looks so smooth. You can see a little bit of a blue pin there on either side, but it really doesn't bother me that much because it's not even a full pin showing, and there's really nothing they could have done about it. Then there are these blasters on the end, which can be rotated separately in full 360s, if you kind of pop them past those there a bit. And the guns themselves look pretty nice. I like the inclusion of the tooth plate there, just adds a little bit more texture and shaping to them. And then there are two more stickers on the top there with the dark green. I also like the little band of dark green there. Once again, just adds a bit more texture and looks pretty nice. And the fact that they didn't make this symmetrical here either helps a lot as well. Now let's move over to the cockpit here, which uses this large glass piece, which I believe was only used on the UCS Slave 1 until now. In this color, it was also used on a LEGO Movie 2 set in purple. And that pops off where you can see the cockpit. And the seat here is gravity driven as well. And as you can see, since that has more weight, it actually tips a lot better. Then you can sit upright in either direction. Obviously, when he's like this, you may want to be facing backwards like that because it may look a bit better. Sadly, there really isn't room for his gun in there with him. But then there is a little bit of detail in there. there is the one sticker there, which you can see with a picture of the Slave 1. And it's actually kind of neat how it's laying down like this, but then when you flip it up, it flips up with it. Just, by the way, the sticker's oriented. Then there's one more little console there, and then another console up there, and that one is just a printed one that's used in all sorts of sets. And I like how even when, you know, the seat flips, they still kind of stay where he can reach them and where they make sense to be. Except for this one. This one kind of goes into his forehead when it's like this. But these two especially. It still works a bit, but not as well as the other two. And then that just slides back on there. I also really like all the little angles here and the way that that stays fairly flush. They had to do a little bit of finagling and guesswork with the slopes and lots of testing. I can't imagine how much work went into getting that, you know, nice and clean there, nice and clean lines. And same on this side. I also like all the little tiny details with the ingots and the half arches and everything all around it. I've said it a lot, but I love all the greebling on this. Just looks very nice. Then as you can see, the sides are even angled a bit here beyond this point, using some interesting Technic structures. And then there's one more thing on the outside here, the cargo hold, which can open up like this. You can see inside it a bit. It's rather dark. You can see a bit of the kind of Technic structure in there. In fact, I'll get you a bit of a better angle with more light so you can see in there deeper. There you go. As you can see, it is pretty spacious in there. There isn't enough room for a minifigure to stand up. Not even really sit down either, especially with minifigs like Boba Fett with the antenna. You can just kind of throw them in there and just kind of have them laying down. They are really hard to get out, though. The main thing that you want to use this cargo hold for, it fits perfectly, which is, of course, Han Solo and Carbonite. We'll look at that a bit closer in a second. And he can just slide on in there. And yeah, he just fits perfectly. He's a bit hard to get out, but you can kind of... There we go. It's a little bit tight, but you can still get him out fairly easily. There is a bit of Technic structure showing in the back, which I wish they would have covered up. They could have easily done it with just the tiniest little bit of a wall. Or even maybe just, like, putting a couple... See, there we go. Stop. There we go. Or maybe just putting a couple smaller Technic beams in the hole there, or a wall on those studs. So it would be covered up, but it's not too bad and doesn't bother me too much, especially since that's not an area you'll be seeing a lot of, since, you know, you kind of don't see it from this higher angle. You just open it up, pop them in, and then you are ready to move out. Move on to minifigs. Here's a slightly higher angle of the ship, so that way you can see a bit of the detailing on the front, and also so that way I can show you better what it looks like when you put it up in this angle. I think holding it like that feels weird, so I like putting one finger through there, and then it just feels all natural. You can also see a bit more of the detailing on the back there, and it's just symmetrical. Especially like just a little bit of tubing there, it's just a nice little detail. And then there's also a couple little clips down at the bottom here to hold on to Boba Fett's weapons or any of his passengers, which is a really nice inclusion. I love when they include places to put the weapons of the minifigs. Even if it's external like this, which really doesn't make sense in-universe, it's just a nice inclusion so that way, you know, you have a place to store them and they don't get lost. There's a big gap here, but if it wasn't there, it would get in the way of the mechanism, so it doesn't bother me. Then up here, you may have noticed those little red things, and those are actually for a mechanism on the front. And as you can see, there's really nothing there that it would activate. But down here, you have a couple spring-loaded shooters in the front, and they run all the way from up there to down here, which is a pretty long way. So you can just take this, push down on it, and it shoots. With a remote activation method there, it's basically just a long pole. Yeah, as you can see, it just shoots like that, and now that's flown off far, and I'll have to go find that later. But yeah, overall, I think this works really well, and I like the ability to pick it up and, you know, switch it properly and have the handle to hold it. That's just a really, really nice inclusion. And then even all the detailing on the underside, which you won't see for the most part. Overall, I think this is a really, really good looking model, and I just love it with all the kind of interesting building techniques to it as well. It looks great and is built weirdly and interestingly, and it's just a outstanding model in my opinion. Now let's move on to the minifigs. And actually, before we look at the minifigs, I want to take a quick peek at this, because all the 20th anniversary sets are based on some of the old original sets. This is the 2000 version of the Slave one, and normally I show them on the back of the box because they also have a picture there, except this box is massive, so it really wouldn't work, so we're just going to use this. Here's this one, and here's that one. As you can see, it's a massive upgrade, and this set was also a very small set. This is a large $120 set, largest out of this wave. This, based on the piece count, would be like maybe a $20 to $30 set. From the time, it's very, very small, especially as you can see with the minifigs. This is tiny in there, and that is massive, and I highly doubt there would even be a cargo hold in there. So, yeah, I thought it was just kind of interesting to compare these. So, now let's move on to minifigs. Here are our first two of 5 minifigs, not including the 20th anniversary figure. One of them not really being a minifig, but I'll still put him in. We have Han Solo here, and then Han Solo in Carbonite. And this is the same mold that they've been using since the beginning, ever since they stopped using just a panel piece. At least I'm pretty sure it's the same mold, because it's at least not very updated, as it does not have the new Han Solo hairpiece that they switched to a couple years ago. It still uses the original kind of just comb-over hairpiece, which didn't really fit him. So I think they definitely should have made an updated version. And then, of course, it has the printing for his shirt, and then all these little bits of black print to show kind of the rocky texture. And other than the hair inaccuracy, this is a really great mold with the legs dipping in just a little bit there, and also the arms, which obviously isn't the position that a minifig can put their arms in, but they had to do it to, you know, make it look accurate to the movie, as that's where he had his hands. So I really like that. Then around the side there are a few little bumps for kind of control panels and such, and there's little bits of silver and black printing on the sides there, which is fairly intricate. Now on the top and bottom there is some bars, that way a minifig can grab onto it and, you know, push it around or carry it or just hold it. And then around the back there are 2 little bars, so that way Han Solo can actually go in the Carbonite, so that way, you know, you can just put him in there when you want him to be in Carbonite. We'll look at that in a second, though, after we look at this Han Solo. And that torso used to be exclusive to the Cloud City Han Solo from the, I believe, $350 Escape or Betrayal on Cloud City set, but now it's used here. The only difference between this minifig and the other is I believe the legs, there may be a different facial expression, but I'm not completely aware of that. He has, of course, the small blaster, which is what Han Solo always uses for his DL-44, and then the Han Solo hairpiece. I really like the dark blue of the torso there. Looks really nice with the white shirt under it. And then it has fairly minimal printing around the back. As well as it doesn't have too much on the front other than, you know, the shirt and the skin underneath. The vest itself is fairly simplistic. And then the legs, of course, have the strap across for his holster. With a little bit of silver printing there. I like how they even printed it across the center of the hip piece there. So when you line it up, it continues all the way across nicely. And then there's just a little bit of printing on the top of the hip piece there for his belt. And if we take that off, you can see his one facial expression, which is fairly neutral, and then his other smiling facial expression, and that's what it would look like if you turn around and put the hair back on. So now let's put him in the Carbonite. You have to take out his blaster for it, and if you really want to, you could of course put that on those clips on the Slave 1 that I showed you. Then, so to put him in, you just kind of put him with his arms at his sides, and then it's fairly simple. You just, you know, clip him in there, and then it looks as if nothing's there. It does bump up the slightest bit because his hairpiece, his face doesn't go quite in enough, but it works fairly well, especially since, you know, most of the time you'll have minifigs holding it slightly above the ground to make it look like it's hovering. He's practically not there unless you get a super low angle like that, so I think that whole setup there works fairly well. Now let's go look at our 3 bounty hunters. Here are the 3 bounty hunters in the set. From left to right, of course, Boba Fett, as this is his ship. In the center, we have the first ever version of Zuckuss, and then on the right, we have 4-LOM, and this is identical to the 4-LOM in the Bounty Hunter Battle Pack from a year or 2 ago. So let's look at him first. The only difference is his accessory, but that really doesn't change the minifig. They're still kind of counted as the same. He has this head mold, which is exclusive to him there, and it looks pretty sick. with the bronze eyes with kind of the dark brown printing there to get the kind of buggy texture, which looks pretty cool. And then he has a torso that kind of has, you know, that same astromech droid type look as C-3PO, as of course he is a droid. I like the little bit of red there just to add a bit of variety and texture. You can imagine that is what you want. I also like all the rust detailing to make him look kind of old and worn. Then the light gray for the center really popping. And then that printing kind of carries around to the back. Once again with the box there on the back, similar to C-3PO's printing. And then let's look at Boba Fett next. We'll save Zuckuss for last, as I think he is one of the coolest minifigs of the set. I believe this Boba Fett is exclusive. I also really like the build that they did for his gun, where they took this, you know, pretty generic ray gun type piece, and then they put a lightsaber handle on it. Except normally they would, like, put that on the top, but then putting it on the bottom kind of created a scope look on the top, which I think looks really cool. It's obviously not accurate to his actual gun, but that'd be really weird to do where, you know, it kind of has the stock that goes around under the arm. Building something like that in LEGO would be a bit odd, so I'll let this slide, because it is a really cool build. His helmet is fairly standard, I like all the little silver printing around to kind of get it chipped and dinged, and especially for, you know, the big dent in the top of his helmet. And then he has the little antenna on top. And that does come in a pack of 4 antennas and 4 visors, so you can switch it out for a visor if you want, or even put 2 antennas, but either way you get a lot of extra antennas and visors, which are really nice. There's also this cloth piece, and it is the kind of harder fabric. It's in dark tan with these dark orange kind of squares, parallelogram type things going down it. And then the front of the torso here has all the armor plating, once again with the little silver bits to make it look scuffed up and dinged. And then the leg printing is really detailed as well. It's just all the little patches and pads and various things. And then even a little bit of toe printing, which even has a bit of kind of weave texture on the sides there with the black lines. Overall, just very, very detailed. And then he has the sand green jetpack, and you can't see the back printing, or it also kind of the cloth here kind of blocks a bit of the front printing. So we'll take a bunch of that stuff off and finish looking at him later. But for now, let's look at Zuckuss here. He has kind of the shotgun looking type build with the ray gun and then binoculars on the front. And then he has this new headpiece there for the kind of bug effect that he has, and it's in dark tan, and it looks really cool. I like the kind of little holes for where hoses would enter there. And obviously they don't want little hoses coming down because they just break and it wouldn't be very nice. They even include little kind of, you know, textures there, which looks really great. And then the eyes are silver with kind of little indents there, which you can see. And that's not actual indents, that's just printed on there with some little dark gray spheres to kind of get that metallic kind of piece over his eyes there, and it looks really neat. And then there is actually a mini bar there on the bottom there, which you could find creative ways to use that somehow. I don't know how anyone would, but you could somehow use this in a creative way if you wanted. Then there's also a little bit of silver on the front for the mouth, for kind of his respirator. He then has one of these newer kind of dress or flowing robe pieces for the legs. And then all this printing carries along. I like the tan lines for kind of the hoses coming from the front. And that just lines up with the head down the torso and into the legs very perfectly. And then there's all this kind of tan patches and splotches there and little plates, which looks really nice. And then around the back, it kind of has some of this kind of Jedi robe detailing, which you can see a bit under. And obviously he's not a Jedi, but it just reminds me of the kind of Jedi robe type things that they have. And then there's even a little bit of bronze in there, which you can only really see when the light hits it right for a bit of tack on the back. And then there's a bit more of that plating around there. And overall, I think he is a really cool minifig and one of the coolest in the set with, you know, a unique headpiece and just the only one in the set with one of those newer robe pieces, which is also a fairly uncommon thing. And he also just looks really cool and unique and is also, you know, first version of a minifig, which is definitely great. So now let's take some of this stuff off of Boba Fett so you can see him a bit better. Now he's stripped down to fairly basic, so you can see the arms, which are sand blue, a bit better, and also the legs are sand blue, which is a color you don't see used very much, but it fits perfectly. Then you can also see the back printing here, which continues the belt, and then obviously has the back plate. So that looks pretty awesome. And then when we take off the helmet, they just use the generic clone head, which I guess does make sense, but I just think they could have done something so much cooler. I know there was that one Boba Fett where they had, a special head for him where it, had a scar across the eye and a cool expression, and it looked really epic. I wish they would, use something more like that instead of just the clone head for such an iconic character as Boba Fett. Here's the 20th anniversary minifig from this set, which is Leia. She has the same 20th anniversary print there as all the other ones, so people can't, just pass it off as an original in really good condition. And then the printing on the front is fairly simplistic, but that makes sense, as, this is an original, and that's what it looked like back in 1999 when the printing couldn't be as good. It also then uses the older original Leia bun piece instead of the newer one, which definitely looks a lot better. This one, the main problem with it is the fact that it comes down a little bit too far on the face. She then has the classic blaster build as well, before they had molded blasters where they would just use a megaphone piece with a transparent stud on it. And then there's the face print, once again, so simple. And then no alternate face, staying true to the original. And I think this looks really neat and is definitely one of my favorite of the 20th anniversary minifigs. So, yeah, that's it for that minifig. Let's move on to final thought. Overall, I love this set. The Slave One is one of my favorite ships from Star Wars. And this does a great job of portraying it. And it looks just very, very clean and just a beautiful model overall, very well designed. And then the minifig selection as well is pretty great. The only minifig here that I don't really like that much is 4-LOM. That's not because he's a bad minifig. It's just because, I already have one from the Bounty Hunter Battle Pack. And so, normally, if it's a minifig that comes in a second set for a time, I say, well, it's a good way for people who couldn't get the original set because it was too expensive. But this set is a lot more expensive, over 7 times, actually 8 times the price of the Bounty Hunter Battle Pack. Quick maths there. So this is a lot more of an expensive way to get it. But if you never got the Bounty Hunter Battle Pack, at least you have a way to get it now, other than bricklinking it, but you could just bricklink it easier. But anyway, if you're going to pick up this set and you don't have him, it's a good addition anyway. So, yeah, he's the only one that I didn't really love that much, but that's just because I already have him. And then, of course, the 20th anniversary minifig is great, as they are with all the other sets, and this is definitely a set that's going on display somewhere if I can find room. But that's all for me for now, and bye.